So in our previous class, do you guys have any questions on web service part? I hope you guys have seen how to deploy, how to run, because this class will be useful if you would have gone through the web services part. Uh, once you deploy your web service in a server, right? Anyways, I'm using my machine as both server and my machine. My emulator will be like mobile, right? This emulator where I'm going to access internet, which is like a web service using a visual file which I have deployed in some remote server, and I'm going to use that in my app. That is the thing what we are going to do, right?
Sridhar, one question. Actually, when you are consuming the web service and when you are using the server's topic, will the emulator become slow?
Sorry.
The emulator will work slow for the server thing.
Emulator will work. You mean slow?
Slow, yeah.
No, like emulator will take. See, emulator will actually consume the network of your machine actually. If your computer is connected to a network, right? So the speed of your machine internet speed will be consumed by your emulator itself.
Okay.
Right? So same way, like if you have your mobile, right? Now if your mobile is connected to the mobile data or Wi-Fi, like or any hotspot or any internet connectivity, right? Then what happens? So whatever we are going to see here, which is consumption of web service, right, will work. Okay, and if either of them, like if you don't have internet connectivity at all, it will check whether it can connect to some web service or not, and if it is not able to connect, then it will actually stop at that point itself. It won't say. It will just say that cannot connect to internet, right, or cannot connect to web services and all, and then it will just say that yes, we can't. So it will just show the data whatever is being populated on a mail or Facebook. If you open a Facebook, old fields, you can see only old fields. If you open up your Twitter, right, let's say you don't have any mobile data or anything or any internet connectivity connected, then you can see only old tweets, right? Because the new tweets will come up when it actually connects to the connect back to the internet again. So which means everything will be push service. Now push service is nothing but the data will be continuously pushed from the host. I'll show you that part too, how we can actually do that, right? And normally the same push part which we are going to get from service, right, backend server, will be received continuously in our front end. Now when I say front end, it is our app, right? Using our app, we are going to see that we are going to read the continuous feed which we are going to get it from. I'll show you how we can actually get a continuous feed from the server, right, and how we can read the continuous feed in our app, in our activity, right? So before that, we'll see how to consume the data. Fine, Sandhya?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now the first thing, there are few steps which you have to remember, right, in order to consume web service. First thing is that, see, if you have hold on your web services, right, then first let us just see the web service first again. Now we created store WS, which is store web services. Now where we created something called a simple class. Now this class is something which is going to be a main web service server for me. Now in that I have created few methods, like one method get fruits and one method get veg. Right? Now everything should be public here. Now this is a method which is going to be exposed to the outside world, my store. If you can see the URL, right, so on that day after deploying the web service in Tomcat, right, you can see these are web services which we deployed, right. Now we browse the same URL. Now as I said, you can browse the URL using your IP, using your host name, using your local host and everything, right? But if you are actually, if you're, as I'm using my local host, which is my local machine as a server, right? And my local host name, which is Srinath, is not registered with a global domain or internet domain, internet hub domain, right? So I can't use my host name as a app service. So that is the reason why I've actually replaced it with my IP. If you can see here, I'm actually using some IP here, right? But if your server, if your client is using any server which is a registered server, right, and that server domain name, like let's say something like SLC 0010 dot some, if you're in US dot some, let's say Oracle company, oracle.com, this will be the server host name, let's say, right? That host name will be registered with the internet hub, which means whenever any Android app tries to get the web service access, right, it will actually check out that server, and in that server it will go to that particular port, and in that particular port it will go to the actual web service library, and in this web service library it will find out services. One of the service it will find it My Store. My Store is a web service name which you have created, and My Store is nothing but a visual file. Now this is a complete URL which you are going to use. Now if you just browse on that, you can see the complete XML format of your web service, right? Now that is what we sometimes we say that I hope you guys would have heard about SOAP UI, right? SOAP UI is something, now we are going to see the SOAP protocol of accessing web service in our Android. That's that is the best one, and this is the one which is mostly used in Android. SOAP is nothing but Simple Object Access Protocol. This is something which is like HTTP protocol we have, right? Hypertext transfer. In the same way we have Simple Object, which means you can actually transfer the complete object in your SOAP. If you're using HTTP, which means you can transfer only certain strings or some XMLs in a string format. You can't actually communicate over the network an object, but you can do that in a SOAP. So that is the reason why we consider SOAP protocol communication in our Android app, and it can be to web service, it can be to a cloud cloud module, it can be anything. So thing will be a SOAP web service, right? Now once the visual file is ready, right, then we'll have to check whether this visual file is working or not. Now working is something you can check in two ways. You can just check, copy this URL in any browser. You should get the complete XML format of all the methods. You can see one of the methods is, let's say, get fruits, and the return type is some string. You can see the type of return is string, right? So this is how you can check everything. You have a wedge, get wedge, and your return type is string, and you have namespace here. Now this namespace is nothing but, this is very important again. Target namespace is something, and this namespace here refers to the package which we have created here. It's very important whenever you create a class which you want to convert it as a web service, right? Always create the class under some package, because this package is going to be your target namespace. You can see com.sri.service is my package, and you can see that the reverse of that will be your namespace with HTTP model. And we are going to use this target namespace in our Android. This is very important to access the corresponding web service, right, through a namespace, right? Now that is one thing. Now once you are done with your web service, then obviously you will create a web service, right click and create. We'll get back to that again, right, because we have actually seen a simple form, like I'm just taking one method here. Let's call this get fruits. Let me just access this get fruits, and what I'm going to do here is I have deployed my web service here, and through this web service I'm going to access get fruits, where I'm going to get apple over the network, and I'll be showing this apple fruit on the activity of my Android screen. That is the first success of communicate, being bridging the communication from our Android app to the server through the internet protocol, and we'll be using something called SOAP protocol here, right? Now let's say the web service is ready. Now we have deployed in our server Tomcat, and after that you can see here I have actually started my Tomcat, right? If you are not sure, always try to start your Tomcat afresh. So here we have a Tomcat folder which you have already seen. So let me go to bin. Let me just stop this Tomcat and restart it again. When I click on shutdown, my Tomcat will shut down and start it again, so that everything will be fresh. All the things whatever deployed, you can see here store.ws .war file, right? It got deployed and my Tomcat is ready and started now. Now let's go ahead and see whether it is started. Let me refresh this. When you refresh, now you can see a fresh XML got created, which means my web service is ready to go. Now let's come back to the Android part now. Now this is very important, guys. These steps which I'm going to show you now, right, will be common for accessing any type of internet web service in general, right? Now the first thing is, in Android you have to use one of the jar library to create a SOAP protocol communication medium. For that purpose we have something called K2 SOAP. One sec. Yeah, KSOAP2 Android assembly. Now this is something which is basically created for the Android to create a SOAP protocol with the host, right? So what I have done is this jar file, I've copied this jar file, right, and I've pasted it to my Android here. Now my Android project. So if you remember, in our Android project we have something called libs folder, right? Now this is a folder where if you want to add any third-party libraries, you can directly add in here. If you remember in our first class when we actually understood the full structure of Android, right? I said this libs folder will be checking out when we add a third-party library, and this KSOAP2 is something which is an Android assembly, right, which gives us a medium to talk to the host, and we will be using something called a SOAP protocol using this. This is very important. The first step itself is that you have to go ahead with your SOAP protocol. Now once you copy it, right, Eclipse will take care of referencing this to the whole project. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to give any other reference to this. And if you want to give any exclusive reference, then it is same as how we do now for normal Eclipse projects. You can go to project, you can go to properties here, right? You have Java build path here, right, where you can see the libraries, right? In libraries, it will already have these all normal jars of Android and any dependencies, everything. Now you can see that as I copied this one, right, you can see it automatically copied something called private libraries over here, right? Now this is how it actually gives reference automatically. I just copied this here and it automatically went to the Java build path and copied here, which means my current Android project is now enabled with my KSOAP protocol. Right, this is the first step we have. Second step. So as we are trying to give as we are trying to access the internet, right? So your app should have an internet permission. Now when I say your app should have an internet permission, which means your app should get a permission from user to access the local mobile phones or tabs internet network connectivity, right? So that is the reason why some apps, whenever you install some apps, right, it will before installing it will ask for accept some permissions, right? It will say contacts, it will say network, right? It will say Bluetooth, it will say Wi-Fi, depending on the type of app you are actually creating, right? It will ask for some permissions. Now how can we actually make that permission enabled in our app is, if you remember, we have this manifest file where we have something called permissions folder. Here I've added a new permission of type android.permission.internet. Now if you go to manifest file here, which is XML format, you can see the same line being added here. So unless we have this, right, even if you give any type of access to the complete app, it won't work. If anything happens to this line, if anyone comments this out, that's it. Your app will never work for any type of internet connectivity. Because this is very important. Fine. The second step, we have this. Now, the next step is, now this is something which is an actual thing which we are going to do now. Now basically till now, I mean, if you have worked in some Java applications and all, right, normally what do we do is, we always follow some MVC patterns, or normally we don't. See, some people, right, most of the team guys don't normally follow MVC patterns, right? So whenever I say MVC, it doesn't mean that you have to use your something called model packages, view packages, or controller packages, right? Or some frameworks like Struts, Hibernate, right? Where we use some, sorry, not Hibernate at all, Struts basically, where we use something called MVC pattern. That is something which is used to actually make user to follow MVC forcefully, where the controller will be at one place, model will be at one place, or some business classes, and views will be always displayed, right, forcefully. But if you even if you are not using your MVC models, right, it doesn't matter at all. You can actually make sure that whatever classes you are writing, always try to divide them in some packages, right? Now normally whenever we create a app, I have just created a new Android project actually, and I just gave the name as My Store, right? So in this My Store, what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the web service, where web service is the one which will actually get the details to show on this on this app. Don't worry, I'll also show. So in the extreme, right, as we progress in our web services access internet, right, I'll show you how we can actually make web service read the local database or a file, get the details on file, and whatever changes we are making in a file, we'll see how it is affecting our Android app. I'll also show that. That will be the extremity of data access from a web service to an app. I'll show you that. Don't worry about that. Right? Now, so here you can see this is My Store. Now, if my project is there, you know that by default I just gave the namespace as com.sri.mystore. Now, this package is tagged with my layout, which is my activity underscore main. The corresponding class is created here. Now, anyway, this is something which is by default it got created. Now, if you can see, I've created a separate package here, which is com.sri.servicecom. Now, this servicecom is the one where we are going to write all the communication part which we are going to do in the whole Android app, right, with the web service. Now, why I have actually created a separate package is, now my Android My Store can have any number of activities, right? Any number of activities, and every activity, let us say, is trying to connect to the same web service to call different methods. Maybe one screen is trying to get fruits, maybe some other screen is trying to get vegetables, right? There will be so many activities which need some functionality to work using web services, right? Now, that is the reason why I've created a separate package, so that every activity can use the same package so that it can connect to the web service. Now, in this servicecom, I've created one class called cls_servicecom.java. Now, if I open this, right, now this is the one which I've actually created so that we can talk to the web service. So let me explain this servicecom first, and then we'll go to the usage part. Now, the first step is, you can see that all the parameters whatever you have for your web service, right, you'll have to mention as a constants in your class. Now you can see that, so few things which are very important are that you should have a namespace, target namespace. You can see that I've taken WS now as it is a final, right? Final is something which is, I'm actually making my namespace as a constant here. That's why I've taken a caps here, which is WS, which is a web service underscore namespace. What is the namespace of a web service? You can see this is the namespace of workspace. I've actually copied the same thing after accessing my visual file, right? Now this was my web service. I've copied this web service and pasted up here. There should not be any spelling mistake or any annotation mistake over here. This is very important. If anything goes wrong in these declarations, right, your complete unit will not work, which is your namespace. Fine. Now the next one is something which is URL. Now the actual visual file. Now this is my visual URL, right? So I am giving this visual URL as a web service URL. Now this is my URL. You have to include even your question mark and WSU, so that it knows that okay, we are going to access the visual file. Now as of now I have taken my IP. Now maybe if you are actually using any server with some domain name, right, like some .com, you can go ahead with the .com and you can go ahead with these services. Now this will not be exposed to any user. This will be internal to your app, right? And the next one is the action method name. Now this method name is something which, like we know that in my web service, my store, I have methods. I'll be having so many methods, right? And one of the methods is my foods. Now the same method name you have to get over here. Now there is no dynamic thing that you can actually get this method on fly and call. Nope. You have to make sure that the method name, whatever you're using here, should be same here. Now anyways, as I'm actually showing one I've created here. Don't worry. So I'll show you in different screens. We may need get fruits or we may need something else, right? I'll show you how to take over, right? And as of now, I'm not showing anything on arguments or anything. I'll show you step by step. Okay. So now, so let's say in this I'm taking my action method and soap action. Now this soap action is not, it's a variable actually. Now the soap action will come with the namespace and a method name, right? So as if like you have a namespace here, till.com and / your method name. So that is what is your soap action. And anyways, I've created a separate method here. You can see like MFN get soap action to make it dynamic, because in each and every activity your method name may change, right? That's why I actually made it as a dynamic one. So wherever you want soap action, which is soap action in the sense my namespace and the method name with a / separation is called as a soap action, right? We are going to access this method which is in this namespace, that is nothing but a soap action, through URL called this. So that is why we have I've created all the declarations at the starting of your class, and I've just made some small comment like these are all declarations. Actually this is my style of coding. So these are declarations and I've kept my methods separately. These are my methods actually. Fine. Now let's get into the actual method. Here what I've done is I've created a separate method called get store details. I've just given some random name just to show you. You can just say get fruit details or anything you want. So initially I've taken it as a get store details. Now my intention here is that I want to access my internet, or I want to create a soap action to go to this method and get the details of the fruits. As simple as that. Now for that there are few steps which are standard to actually access a web service and get the details. Now the first step is that, now anyways, this is a soap action as said. Now this integration or this combination is called as a soap action, right? Now wherever you can see MFN soap action, this is same as I've actually defined this as a separate method. That's it. Maybe you can also define, because if you keep few things which are very sensitive as a common method, right, the maintenance part will be very easy. So that is the reason why I've actually defined it here. Otherwise, what you can do, you can actually collaborate these anywhere you want, right? But don't do that, because these things are very sensitive. Tomorrow, let's say you have created 100 different methods which are accessing the SOAP action. What happens then? You have to change, if there is any small change of some slash or adding up something, right, then you'll have to change in each and every method. Instead of that, just keep it in one. That's why I've taken these constants. If you want to change URL, you can change at one place. You don't have to change URL at so many places, right? So that is the reason why we have taken everything at first. Now here you can see I've actually taken log D. Now, so this is the best practice, guys. Each and every step of whatever you are doing in Android, right, always try to log them in the Android log, which is a logcat. Now, how to log in a logcat is something using your log.debug. Right? Now, you can see here that each and every time you do log D, right, this is called as your tag. Now, let me just show you here. Now, you can see there is tag, right? Let me just show you, clean it up. You can see that this is tag and this is text. Now, this tag is nothing but a key, which is the first argument is your tag and the second argument is the explanation actually. Okay, what exactly is the text? That is your log D. Now you can see that here initially what I've done is I've actually before entering into any SOAP protocol access, right, I've actually given everything. So what is the namespace we are using, what is the method name, and what is the SOAP action, what is URL. I've actually entered everything, and then I just said entered into transport SC, which is building of a transport protocol. Now here these steps are standard for accessing any of the visual using SOAP protocol. Now the first method is a SOAP object. Now you can see that each and every network object is your KSOAP2 object. If you don't have this jar file copied, right, or taken as reference, right, you can't actually do any sort of SOAP protocol programming. Now you can see here the first object which you have to create is a SOAP object. Now this is same as the networking which we normally used to do in our Java, right? Now in Java, if you want to create any SOAP access protocol, then we have to create a SOAP object, right? Normally what do? We have to create a SOAP object. We have to serialize the object, right? And the next step is that you have to create a transport. Now here, anyways, we are going to use HTTP transport, and through that transport, we have to call the SOAP protocol request. That is what we normally do in our Java. Same thing is here, but we'll be using something called KSOAP2 API here. Now we will be creating SOAP object here. Now this SOAP object needs a SOAP with the constructor namespace and action method. Now this namespace is nothing but your direct namespace, right? And action method is nothing but what is the method you want to access in this namespace. That is your SOAP object, right? And this SOAP object has to be serialized. Now for serializing the SOAP object, we are going to use something called SOAP serialization envelope. Again, this is something which is a KSOAP2 API's internal class, where we are going to create a SOAP object called envelope, let us see, because this is something which is SOAP serialization envelope. Now this one, we are actually, as we are trying to pose the request, right, we are taking something called set output SOAP object of this request, right? Now till now we haven't actually mapped this SOAP. We are in process of creating a SOAP object only, right? Now once you are done with the creation of SOAP object, then we have to go ahead with, that's why I have actually made some delimitations here. So this is a pattern to create a SOAP simulation object, and this is the one where we are actually creating a HTTP transport. Now here HTTP transport again is something which is a KSOAP2 class here. Now this transport we are going to create it for the web service URL. Now this web service URL will actually, so if there is any problem in creation of web service URL, right, then here itself it will actually create an error. It won't move forward. It will actually stop abruptly here and it will come out. So that is the reason why you should be sure that whatever you are actually providing is working fine, right? Using the URL, will be creating a SOAP transport, HTTP transport, and once you are ready with your SOAP object and HTTP transport, then you will have to call your HTTP method. Now we have to give the SOAP action. Now again, the SOAP action is nothing but we are going to use this URL. In this URL, I have this namespace and this method, and I am giving my SOAP serialized object. Now till this part, it will create a SOAP object and it will actually try to interact with the internet. Now this is the main part, like .call or this HT itself will decide whether the internet connectivity is done or not. If it is not done, you can just say that yes, internet connectivity is not done, and you can stop there. Yes, and let me finish here so that you can ask question, right? Because I don't want to break here, right? Just now. So once your connectivity is done, right, which means now your HT, which is your transport, will bridge the connection between web service, will call the certain method which you are defined in your action SOAP, and whatever written is there will be automatically mapped to the serialized object called envelope. This is your SOAP object. Now, which means if this step crosses, right, which means the call of web service is done and the mapping of response is done to the serialized object called envelope. Now this envelope will contain response. Now using this envelope, the next step is that getting response. Now this is the one where we normally get the response. Now you can see that this envelope will actually give us the object type of response. Now we know that our get fruits will actually give us a string, right, normally, but as we know that SOAP protocol is something which takes over the protocol, the messaging protocol of SOAP will be an object and the response part will be an object. Now that is what we are getting in response as an object, and we never know what is the type of response we are going to get, right? So here again, so this is a serialized response we have got here, right? Then you have to convert it into the native response. Now that's why you can see I'm actually converting the serialized envelope to a SOAP primitive. To the SOAP primitive here is again something which will convert a serialized object response to the native type, and this native type will actually contain the data whatever you are passing from here, right? So that is what is our primitive, and as we know that we are going to get a string type, right? Now anyways, till this part envelope doesn't know, because this is an internal serialized object, right? It doesn't know what is the type of response we are expecting, but we know it's a string. So that's why the response whatever we have got will actually we can convert to the string using toString, and this will actually give us a final object called string here. And now once you get the string object, right, now we can return this string back to the method whomsoever is calling this store details. Now this is how your web service works. Now here till here what I've explained is I've explained something from the time get store details is called, how the internet is being, our web service is being accessed, and how the response is actually retrieved, and we can return that response. That's it. I have actually not, I haven't entered to something where how to map or call this from Android. Now, yes, Sandhya, go ahead. What is the question? Hello, Sandhya?
Go ahead, Srinath. I got it. Go ahead.
Okay. Fine. Okay, so this is a service call method which you have created, right? Now, this is a single method which we created to get the store details, and this store details we are going to get it from GetFruits. Right? Now, So now let's go ahead and see how we can actually call this using in our activity. Now for that I've actually created I've actually taken the main activity itself. Now in my main activity what I've done is I've taken a button here, right, and a small text view. Okay, one sec. So here I've taken a button. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is, so this text view I've taken to actually show the end result of web service result, right? So whatever we are going to get it from web service data, we are going to show it on this text. So I just gave hello world. Actually, let me just remove that hello world to some dots. Okay, that's it. So this is my data which I'm going to show, right? And so when I click on get, right, now this is button to actually start my internet connectivity actually. So normally what happens is whenever any app starts, right, on create of app itself, so a few apps will start connecting to the internet and will start getting the feed of different business items to show on app. But here I have taken a button so that what we're going to do is on click of this button we'll start connecting to the internet. Now let's go to the class and see how we can actually do that. Now here, if you remember, even before the web services actually, right, we learned background threading. Now again, this is a continuity of the background threading again. If you remember, as I said, in our Android, right, after 15th API usage, you can think about, like, if you are using 16th API, Android API and above, right, you have to create a separate thread in order to access internet. This is a very important statement. You can't access, or no, whenever I say access, right, which means I can't call this method called get server store details directly on create. No, I can't do that. Why? Because this protocol action should be done in a separate thread. So initially it was not mandatory that you have to call, but in current Android apps, right, it is mandatory. Why? See, whenever you try to access, see, if I call this service method called get server store details during on create of any activity, right, what happens? Let's say your internet is slow and or your internet is not at all connecting, and this get store details method is trying to connect to your internet. Your transport is trying to happen. So till that time, what happens? Your activity will get freezed until unless this method is completed and get back to your on create and get back to this method and complete this method, right? Your activity will not be loaded. That is that is one of the biggest disadvantage we have when we actually go for a synchronized way of accessing internet. So that is the reason why Android always insists us to try to connect to the web services or any internet modules in a separate thread. As of now, you can see in my service com I haven't used any of the thread. This is a straightforward method, but we are going to check that which we have seen in our background threading. Same method we are going to check in the current milestone. Now here you can see that I've actually taken the button here, and what I've done is, so whenever we click on this button, then I'm going to start the action. So for understanding purpose, I've actually mentioned the same name called start background process, which we have already used in background threading. In this start background process, you can see that first step what I have done is I've actually created a thread. This is the first and last step, which is whatever I'm going to do now here, right? I'm going to do it in a thread, right? First I'll be creating a thread. Now in this thread, so the main thing what I'm doing is, anyways, I'm going to call run method, because in thread, if you want to start this thread, run is a method which will take up asynchronous process in a separate thread in Java. Right? Now here this step, so from here things are very simple. Now here you can see in this run method I am actually creating a service.com object. This is my service.com class. I am actually creating a service.com object, right, which is obj, and I just call obj.getStoreDetails. So this getStoreDetails is something which is here in my service.com. Now whenever I call this getStoreDetails, now it will start creating the SOAP protocol and getting the things and everything, and you can see at last I am actually returning the result. Now this result I am actually catching in my LSTR data. Now till this step is fine. Then the next step is we have to map the response to the UI part here, right? But you can see here what we are doing, we have actually created a separate thread. But when we create a separate thread, which means we came out of UI thread, right? Each and every process in Java or Android will be taken up as a thread. The main thread in the main thread in Android is a UI thread, which is your layout thread. Now here when I created a separate thread, which means if I want to map some data on UI, what I have to do? I have to go back to the UI thread. Now in order to go back to the UI thread, you have an internal method of Android activity API call run on UI thread. When you just call this method called run on UI thread, so whatsoever thread you are using, it will immediately go to that thread, and whatever data is there in this current thread, right, will actually can be mapped to the any of the controls in the UI. Now this model is called as a delegation model. So normally we call them as a delegates. If you guys have any knowledge on .NET, right, we have something called delegates there. Now delegate is something which is used to get data from one thread to other thread without having a direct connection. That is called as a delegate. Now here run on UI method will actually give us a delegate model here. Now run on UI thread will always take a runnable action. I hope you know this runnable action. We have understood, we have actually learned this runnable action when we have learned diagonal threading. Now in runnable action, I am actually mapping this LSTR data to my text data. That's it. So to my text view, which is text.txt data, right, I am mapping my LSTR data. Now this will show whatever the web service is retrieving from GetFruits will be shown on the UI part, and the UI is nothing but your this text, edit text section. Sorry, text view. Right. Now once you are done with thread creation, then the next step is something which is you have to start the thread. Now I have started the thread here, which is thread LOBJ3HRD, which is my thread object here, dot start. When I say start, which means it will actually call a run method, and a separate execution process will be created in mobile processing itself, and then it will run the complete code, whatever you have defined inside it. Now this is how we have to call. Now this is the standard model to access internet in any app or any activity as such. You have to go for separate thread, and from this thread whatever data you are actually getting, if you want to show on UI, you have to go for run on UI thread and then start your thread. Now this is how we normally do the task. Fine. So let me just run this and let me show you how it works. Now you can see that the web service, now you can see I am just using the URL here, which means we never know where this URL is deployed, right? Now I have taken this IP, which means it can be anywhere, right? So it won't even check only my local machine. It will try to check the internet, almost whatever domain I'm using, because my machine is connected to the internet, right? It will try to check all the IPs, it will check all the machines with this IP, and wherever it gets, then it will go to this port, then it will go to this web service API and to the services of Maestro, and then it will access the namespace and fruits, and it will get us, and it will show us on a UI actually. That is what is going to happen here, right? So let us see how it works. I'll show you. I'll show you step by step in Logcat. This is very important. Let me run this. So you have installing your MyStore. Now you can see that you can see here that this is my Tomcat which is running now. Now you can see the last time here is server startup in so and so seconds. Now what I'm going to do, when I click on get, right, now this is my mobile phone type of, right, when I click on get, which means I'm trying to access a web service which is deployed on a remote machine. Now that remote machine is nothing but a server. Now here in my Tomcat you can see some log going on. Now let me click on get here. When I click on get, right, you can see you have got an app. Now this is something which we actually got it from the web service. Now let's go to the Logcat here. Now in Logcat you can see each and everything whatever you have printed. The namespace is service.sri.com. Method name is getFruits. You can see soap action is namespace and slash and the method. And the URL which you have used is something which is this URL. And you can see response. Web service response which you have got is app. Right? Now this is what is Logcat which you can see here. This is your tag and your text. Right? And we have done sysout, right? You can see sysout also got printed here. Now actually I have done this system.out over here. You can see here. This is the one which I have printed. Actually I was trying to print this on console, right? Now it also got printed on my Logcat itself. Right? So this is how we can actually access your internet actually. Now, so till here, you guys have any questions? You can ask me now. So what I'm going to do here is that, so till this part, I'll stop here. So I want you guys to try out this one. Try to start your Tomcat. Try to deploy your Tomcat. Right? Try to create a web service, a very simple web service. Or if you're already doing some, some e-commerce site app, right? You can create a separate app. Don't worry about very big things. Try creating a simple store, web service. Try to create a one method. Try to create a web service of this. Deploy in Tomcat. Follow the same video which I've created in the previous class, right? Follow the same and try to create it, and then try to follow this code where we have created a service com and a main method. So that is the reason why, to keep it more simple, I haven't created more activities. Okay.
Srinath, if you want to consume two methods, we can give that method name and service.
We can. So that thing we are going to see. So the advanced part we'll see in our next class. Okay. We have more things to see here. So this is something which is static, right? We'll see how we can actually see dynamic things also, right? I'll show you that part in our next class. But in this
consuming two methods is different than one.
Consuming two, what do you mean?
I mean, in class, you said in service common.java you will define the two methods, right?
No, actually what we'll do is we'll always keep this blank actually. So wherever we want.
Okay, fine. Got it.
Yeah.
So dynamically at the time of running, you will give the name. Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do here is, that was a good question. So what I'm going to do here is, let's say I'm going to delete this. When I create an object, right, I'm going to give obj dot action method name. Yes?
Okay.
Right? Now this will actually create an action method for me. Right?
Okay. So whenever you are consuming that, you will give the method name dynamically.
Exactly. True.
Okay.
Right. So any questions? So you can go through this. I hope this will actually give you the actual thing. Now you can apply how to map this and how to do different things. You can apply the previous class notes. Okay.